Yes, we can.
Terrific. So the last time I was here was I gave a presentation in 2018. And when I first started the first slide, my career, there was a burst of laughter from the audience because I was a dinosaur stuck back in 1970 level programming. But it was 2014 when I first started trying to work with Swift. And I was kind of excited. The watch was coming, Swift was coming, and I thought it would all come together. Unfortunately, in 2015, after I'd been to WWDC and for the first time, a client rang me up, and I then disappeared for 2.5 years to program manage their delivery of their CRM. So I wasn't able to get down into the details of Swift. However, after that, I was able to move back into the development role, and I started connecting with you guys and gave the presentation on where I'd been and where I was going. The good thing about that presentation was that it led me to being introduced to Nicole Rowland, and she offered me a role with her in Swinburne to deliver creating data-driven mobile applications. So that's what I've been doing since 2019. This is the third year, and I've tutored and brought to the market, if you like, about 100 developers. Nicole and I gave this presentation similar to this last year at Dev World, and there you can see me with my COVID-19 beard. What I'm doing now is taking the elements of that presentation and taking it through a bit of a journey of how we've been extending the curriculum. So the students we get are typically, we ask for them to have a strong, solid object-oriented programming background. Some of them tick the box, but clearly don't have it, and then struggle through the first third of the semester. And the other requirement which causes a lot of issues is the requirement for people to have Macs. And we have a real entry cost barrier to being able to put students through and get them up and going in the iOS Swift UI kit world. And we also get people who don't really, the completion of this unit is just a way of them getting a tick in a box, and their main focus is on something like networking. The structure of the unit is phased over three modules of 4 weeks. And the first 4 weeks are about the fundamental skills. We've introduced them to GitHub, Swift, Xcode, iOS, and get them going with the fundamentals of the language and the fundamentals of building their first UI, basically a conversion application. The next 4 weeks are all about the data-driven focus of this particular unit, which is data here on the device, whether it's coming from a GPS sensor, accelerometers, gyroscopes, or whatever. Data there, which is data that's in the cloud. So we ask them to take an open API of their choice and integrate it into an app. And then data everywhere. That's kind of the credit task where they take an open API, they take the edit and addition of tables that they did in the first app and integrate that together, and then push some information to a service such as Facebook or Twitter. So an example of that is somebody will write themselves a Restaurants in Melbourne app. They'll go to their favorite restaurants using MapKit, and when they're there, maybe take a photograph of the menu and press tweet and have their review of the restaurant go live. So that kind of brings everybody up to a reasonable level of capability by the end of 8 weeks. And then we try to get them to work with the community. So I push all the way through each of the semesters, come to CocoaHeads, get involved, become part of the community. I'm constantly asked, how can I get a job in this industry? And I'll say, come to CocoaHeads. And I really would like to commend to the people in the audience who are hiring people that if you come across any of our students who have done the distinction and high distinction stretch, where they've moved from a vanilla, Swinburne student on the left of the screen to a production-ready engineer on the right, they are of good capability and good quality. The distinction stretch, we asked them to come up with a concept, pitch it to us, come up with the design, pitch that to us, show us a bit of a prototype, and then do a build, intensive, integrate, and test phase. And that's what about 5 students have been doing for the past couple of weeks. And they'll be presenting to myself and the lecturer in charge tomorrow and doing their final demonstrations for getting distinction or high distinction. Now, alongside with this, because this unit only goes in the first semester of the year, I picked up a second unit, which is user-centered design. So I want to spend a little bit of time on that and talk about its relevance with respect to Swift. So user-centered design takes an ISO framework and an ISO methodology and identified work products within the ISO world. And we create miniature project teams of 3 to 4 students, give them a project brief, and we ask them to come up with a design. So they go through the whole process of who are the users, what are their needs, what are their wants, what are their desires, how can we try to meet those, and iterate through the design process of a wireframe, low fidelity, medium fidelity, and high fidelity prototypes. We get them to use, we're quite happy if they use PowerPoint and Keynote with hotspots, or they can use Balsamic, which is a desktop computer system that we have in Swinburne Laboratories, or tools like Adobe XD or Sketch or Figma. It had always been my ambition that we could introduce them to storyboarding and be able to produce a high fidelity prototype with some storyboarding and minimal amount of code, but we've not been able to pull that off. Certainly what we do get is students that go through the user-centered design course, UCD, and then end up in CDDM and vice versa. So again, if you have somebody coming to you and says, yes, they did user-centered design at Swinburne and or CDDM at Swinburne, then I really do commend them to you. The most fascinating thing to me about user-centered design is they go through the design process, but we then stress test the design by putting them into our usability lab, which of course in the COVID world has been a little bit difficult, but we've done it basically through tools like Skype for Business and Zoom and so on. But it's astonishing when they think they have a great design, they develop 5 test tasks to 10 test tasks for users to use, they bring in a naive user, the user has to perform the task, and we film and record their interactions and the screen interactions, and then say to them, now rate your design on the basis of real world tests. And it's absolutely fascinating watching what they thought was intuitive and obvious just fall apart. And it's a great experience for them. I've been working with the curriculum over the last year or so in trying to push it in 2 different directions. So broaden it from the fundamental skills, integration skills, and consolidation with the community to looking at things like project management, risk management, test-driven development, RUP approach to the world, performance testing, stress testing, and at the technical end of the spectrum, looking at functional programming and numerical computing, recursive programming, and statistical computing. And I've been directing the students to the Swift organization packages such as Swift Numerics, Swift algorithms, and Swift collections, which allow you to extend the language in nice areas. Now, the code on the left here is actually a Python programming, and I've had to learn Python now to sort of come to grips with how some computer science students and problems are being solved. And there's a nice feature in Python called yield, where you can progressively push results out of your thread back to the main thread. I was kind of hoping that over the next couple of days, the last couple of days rather, I would have been able to solve the problem by using async and await or collaborative sequencing, but I haven't been able to pull it off yet. This is an example of some of the numerical computing challenges that I've been throwing at the students. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a Swift Playground where we've looked at the Euclid's GCD theorem, and we've been able to demonstrate graphically how quickly that theorem does collapse from dealing with numbers in the hundreds of thousands to find what are the common denominator in a very quick process. I like to portray some of these results in graphical ways, and the one on the right there is an example of the program of finding XY coordinates and plotting, just to go back, it's an example of how to find integer pairs that satisfy the equation on the bottom of the screen. Anyway, the most recent one we've been doing is this GCD problem, and here's an example of the competition that I get from other professionals across the Twitter sphere of coming up with solutions, whether it's a BASIC, APL, Julia, Scala, C++, Perl, Bash, Lisp, Excel, or whatever. So the challenges I'd like to set to my students is, here's the problem, here are what other people are coming up with solutions, now let's devise a Swift solution that is as neat as some of these solutions that you see on your screen in front of you. Whoops, sorry, there was one glitch. So one more thing, the impact of DubDub. This is the week of DubDub. It's been a great DubDub. It's not as, I think it's, a talk cycle of improvements, as was stated earlier very most eloquently. So Swift 2019 was really good, brought us Swift UIs. I had a good look at trying to bring that into the semester for 2020. However, it became clear in early 2020 that Swift UI was moving too quickly and was going to obsolete our teaching material, so we stepped away from it. 2021, we probably should have wrapped up and put in more Swift UI content. However, the pandemic was the pandemic. However, a number of the students in this semester have tackled it in extensions to their modules and projects. Going forward, I'm going to be looking at how we can produce or introduce combine, async await, and structured concurrency, and continue and push our involvement in various Swift packages such as Numerics. Thanks very much. That's the evolution of my Swift journey from 2014 to now, and how we try to take some of our students along the same journey. Back to you.